For your attendance tonight at our community engagement session. My name is Nicole Marble, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Academic Officer for the Wauwatosa School District. For our online attendees, I just want to give an overview of the format of our engagement session this evening. It's a two-part process. The first part is information, delivery of information around curriculum. And then after the conclusion of that, it is really an interactive in-person event at that point in time to look at different resources and materials that we have here on site. So as soon as the formal presentation concludes, we will be signing off from the virtual attendance, and then we will have Q&As and opportunities to engage with the materials that we have in front of us this evening with those that are in the room with our wonderful curriculum coordinators, who I will introduce momentarily. So again, thank you so much for being here this evening. Our curriculum team that will be talking this evening is really one sliver of our full team here in the Division of Academic Performance. So this visual that you are able to view tonight highlights the other pillars of our division, and we want to acknowledge the people that are in our division, and then where our curriculum coordinators and our director of curriculum fit into the greater picture. So I will go ahead and start by introducing our team. Again, I am Nicole Marble, Chief Academic Officer, and I will turn it over to our Director of Curriculum.
Hello, I'm Jessica Ebert. I am the Director of Curriculum, and we have several curriculum coordinators that work alongside myself. Our two elementary curriculum coordinators is Brenda Jones, and she is our elementary literacy curriculum coordinator. Liza Weber is our math elementary curriculum coordinator, and at the secondary level, so serving from 6th grade to 12th grade, is Katie Crivello, who oversees literacy, Melissa Jakes, who is serving math 6-12, and then Sarah Blahash, science K-12, and Laura Fowles, social studies K-12. So that makes up our curriculum coordinator team. All right, I apologize for the microphone. Really, to understand our work more fully, it is important to have really a shared definition of curriculum. So on the slide, I'm going to give you a moment just to read how we are defining curriculum. The first part just provides that definition, and then there is a quote by Larry Ainsworth that we're leaning into when we think about what curriculum is here in Wauwatosa. And if you haven't finished reading, I'll give just a little bit of context. So sometimes when we think about curriculum, materials or resources is referred to as the curriculum. And for us, those are really curricular resources. They do make up curriculum, but they are just a small part of the vast work that we do as a curriculum team when we think about the identification of standards and skills and outcomes and how we map that all out and how we create assessments and support high quality instruction along with our instructional coaches. That is really what curriculum is in the context of our work. So I wanted to be able to provide that shared definition before we really jump into what we do in relation to curriculum. To build background and additional shared understanding, a key driver in our work is really to align our align our actions to our vision. If actions do not follow, if action really doesn't follow these words, then they're merely just that, they're words. And so one of our ways in which we are working as a curriculum team is to serve this vision. And that vision is to ensure an exceptional student experience, eradicate inequity, eliminate disproportionality, and exceed proficiency for all. So this vision is really our North Star and guides us as we make plans and we tackle topics and problem solve to improve practices. Our mission communicates who we aim to be as an organization. This mission reads, as a connected, inclusive community of learners, we serve as active advocates to provide equitable access to excellent academic, co-curricular, and social emotional learning opportunities that empower every student to thrive as passionate, productive, and creative citizens. And finally, it is our core values that communicate those really shared beliefs in order to achieve our vision and live our mission. So I'll give you a moment just to read over those core values as well. Come on in. Yes. So here again, I know it's talked about at the very beginning, but here's our agenda for the evening. We have really divided the evening into two parts. The first being a presentation where we'll give you this high level overview of the curriculum review cycle and the work that is happening during the school year in relation to this cycle. And the second part of the evening will be our engagement session. So after this presentation, we'll kind of break and we'll give a moment for you to engage with our curriculum coordinator team. This is where you'll be able to review resources and materials in the presentation that are talked about, ask questions. You can ask them of myself, Dr. Marble, or of our curriculum coordinator team. We also hope that at the end of this presentation and your time here this evening that we achieve these objectives. So we hope that you understand the importance of a 7-year curriculum review cycle, that you understand the 4 phases of a 7-year curriculum cycle, and that you understand the work that is occurring in each phase of the 7-year curriculum cycle for the 23-24 school year. So let's hop into the presentation portion. That was just a little bit of some shared understanding and background. So as an entire division of academic performance, we are executing action aligned to our strategic plan and specific to goal number 1. And so goal number 1 communicates that we want to strengthen student learning by providing each individual with a rigorous educational experience that aligns with Wisconsin and the national standards, as well as the vision of a graduate, while preparing students for a productive and successful post-secondary experience. Strategic goal number 1 outlines specific objectives as well. So those are all the objectives outlined on the screen. And as a curriculum team, our primary work really lives in objective 1.1. That objective communicates the review of curriculum, instructional resources, programming, and assessments to ensure alignment with the academic goal statement. Now, we absolutely visit are in some of the other objectives at time, but our primary work really lives as a curriculum team in that first objective. So born out of the strategic plan and objective 1.1 was the development of a curriculum review cycle. The review cycle identifies all of the content areas and ensures each area is either being reviewed, implemented, and or monitored every year. An articulated review cycle was not outlined anywhere that we could really find prior to the 22-23 school year. There might have been some notes on documents and things like that, some attempts to get that started. We do have policy 2210, which is really connected to the review cycle, but nothing really drawn out like you're seeing here on the screen. The curriculum review cycle has 4 phases, which you see off to the left, and I do have a copy here. See it on the screen, or do you want to grab one for? You can see on the left side of the screen that it's divided into 4 phases. So you see words like audit, development. Now there's the board approval, implementation, monitoring, and adjusting and monitoring as well. What's on the slide is a little different than what you have in your hand. We made sure to clean up where it says adjust and monitor, that it says adjust and monitor for those last 3 years. It is important to note that really high-performing districts have a clearly articulated curriculum review cycle. It is a standard operating procedure. It's really important to an organization to have something like this. So I'll give you a moment just to review that on the slide, and then also if you have the paper copy in front of you. So this curriculum review cycle is a cycle for improvement. It's a macro system of improvement, and the cycle follows the concept of a plan, do, check, or study, act, adjust. And the word audit is definitely part of our review cycle, but it isn't necessarily part of that PDSA or that plan, do, study, act cycle. It's really in service of that cycle. The audit is done to launch or set the cycle in motion and inform what happens in the improvement step and the planning process of improvement. Here are those 4 phases again. So we have them outlined on the left side of the review cycle, but also you can see them named here. And I kind of highlighted the ones that are part of that PDSA cycle in green. Those are the improvement steps where auditing is really elevating the current state and really being able to see what actions we'll take throughout the rest of the cycle. So our goal tonight is to provide further detail of what happens in each phases of the review cycle and then what is happening in relation to those phases during the 23-24 school year. So we're going to start with audit. So what is an audit and what happens during this phase? As named before, the audit starts the cycle for improvement, but again, in reality is really in service of the cycle. The audit means to study. The audit phase helps us examine the current state of curriculum, instructional practices, and assessment for any given content area or course. The purpose of an audit is to really broaden our perspective on the appropriateness, the relevance, and the quality of the curriculum delivered in regard to preparing students for the future. Typically, the audit is done by an external expert in that field of that content area. Actions during the audit may include data analysis, survey, feedback, focus groups, comparisons to best practice, reference to recent research. But the audit really is truly there to identify gaps in strengths and also areas in need of improvement. The final audit report is shared with the Division of Academic Performance by the external auditor, the Curriculum Council, and the school board. During the 23-24 school year, we have several audits taking place, and those include K-12 Social Studies, 112 World Language, and we also have a program audit that follows a similar cycle as the curriculum review cycle, and that is for STEM. Ongoing communication regarding the audits will emerge within our district newsletter. Recently, the newsletter communicated the names of the individuals conducting the audits this school year. So linked at the bottom of this page is our review website. And we can have that up for anyone who wants to take a look at that during the engagement session. But furthermore, we have this webpage, as I was saying, and you can find updates and information included there as well. But to explain the audit phase in further detail and provide more information regarding audits this school year, I'm going to turn it over to our K-12 Social Studies Curriculum Coordinator, Laura Fowle. And she's going to outline the process for the audit with social studies, but it's important to note that this really mirrors the process that we'll take for both world language and for STEM. So going to see it through the lens of social studies, but it's the same kind of context. So Laura, if you want to come on.
Good evening. In order to prepare for the audit that we are engaging in this year, last year, Jessica and I had the opportunity to interview 3 different candidates for an external auditor. We chose the one that we ultimately felt aligned most closely with our district mission, vision, and core values. This person, her name is Dr. Melissa Gibson. She's an associate professor at Marquette, but also has a great deal of K-12 experience that's going to be very helpful for us as we go through the audit. I believe for her full bio, it is on the website that is linked if you'd like to read further information about her. Dr. Gibson will be able to provide us with a different and objective lens as she helps us to understand our current state of social studies across the district and the K-12 system. So she will do that by creating stakeholder surveys for our students, staff, and families, as well as hold stakeholder focus groups for those same groups as well, and engage in classroom observations in order to see teachers in their element and engaging with students. At this same time, myself and other professional teams will be engaging in our own learning and professional development in order to better understand social studies as it aligns to the Wisconsin State Social Studies standards, the College, Career, and Civic Life Framework, which we call the C3 framework, and best practices in instruction. After Dr. Gibson's audit process is complete and she's gathered data and information for us, she will synthesize her findings into a report that is presented to the Division of Academic Performance, the Curriculum Council, and the Board of Education, as well as our staff, so that we can better understand our strengths, our opportunities for growth, and possible next steps. Should you have any further questions related to social studies, I'm happy to answer those questions after this information portion of the evening. Otherwise, the process that I outlined will look the same in the other areas as well.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so that's really what the audit phase entails. So moving along, the next phase of the review cycle is the development phase. The development phase is where we begin to make a plan in response to the audit recommendations or in response to monitoring. The development phase is divided into two parts, and you can see through the review cycle, it takes about a year and a half worth of time before we begin implementation. It's a lengthier part of our review cycle. And it's divided, as I said, into those two parts, development part 1 and development part 2. So in the development phase, this might include the creation of a shared philosophy and belief statements, the articulation of standards and outcomes relative to the grade level content or course, the selection of program materials and resources aligned to standards, the development of a professional learning plan, the creation of what we call scope and sequence, which is just a unit by unit map for teachers to follow. Those are some of the actions that might happen during the development phase. But posted on the board agenda for October 9th are 3 content areas that will be brought forward to the board for conversation and approval of new resources and materials. So we're partway through the development phase for these content areas right here: K-12 science, 9-12 English language arts, and 6-12 technology education, including Project Lead the Way. These reports will really communicate the actions that occurred within the first part of development and what will continue to occur during the 23-24 school year. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our curriculum coordinators that have been working on 9-12 English language arts and K-12 science in order to support some further information about what is happening during development for these courses.
Hi, this is Sarah Blahush, the Science Curriculum Coordinator, along with Katie Crivello, who is the Secondary ELA Curriculum Coordinator. And we will kind of speak to what happens during the development phase. So we, as curriculum coordinators, really first start forming review teams. The review team can engage in the work that's kind of outlined on the slide. And there are nuances from content area to content area, but generally the review teams do the work of identifying and prioritizing actions from the audit or monitoring phase, whatever's elevated this work. The group then studies and evaluates resources and materials and engage in various types of professional learning to more deeply understand the standards and build capacity to review those resources. So those things in the case of science and ELA, that professional learning included things like immersion experiences to build understanding of standards and the initial review tools, learning around our cultural proficiency review, site visits to other school districts across the state that were using materials that we are reviewing, and then also piloting of materials ourselves with teams. So as a result of that work, the group really elevates the highest quality resources using research-based tools. Again, in our case, we each had subject-specific initial rubrics that were outlining really to what degree were these resources aligning and supporting the standards. Our cultural proficiency review, a decision analysis, and then the NERN hexagon tool. And as a result of elevating those final resources, the groups continued to engage in further planning for professional learning for the larger team of teachers, and just really diving into what kind of support would be needed to implement the standards and bring our visions in our respective content areas to life. And as Jessica mentioned, we will be at the school board meeting on Monday, October 9th, answering any questions in regard to our executive summaries and new course proposals that we're bringing forward. And more information can be found on the board agenda in regards to that. And after this session, you're welcome to talk with either of us more about our resources and our content areas.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're moving along to the implementation phase. And so after that development phase, we move into implementation. And implementation really means to enact the programming changes outlined in the development phase. And that goes from resources to professional learning to just how we're going to execute just those programming changes before our students. So many plans happen prior to implementation, and that's all the things that I had named before. But during implementation, the changes are very closely monitored, and ongoing improvement efforts continue as needed. Our coaches and our building principals are instrumental in the implementation phase of the review cycle. During the 23-24 school year, we do not have any new courses or content areas being implemented. So that will start next school year and then continue on because we now have this review cycle that outlines that. And finally comes the monitor and adjust phase. During the monitor and adjust phase, the impact of implementation is studied. Additionally, the effectiveness of the current state on student progress towards standards mastery is studied. The continuous review of data, ongoing professional learning, and periodic updates to Curriculum Council occur. In this phase, the intentional response to the information learned is acted upon. It's a really important part of the monitoring and adjusting phase is that what we learn, we act on. All the phases of the review cycle are important, but this one holds great importance. At times, the monitoring phase can result in a return to an audit, which can be either internal or external, and right back into development. That was the case for K-8 ELA last year, in which we returned to an audit, both conducting internally, but we also had our curriculum instruction and assessment audit that informed a need to look at K-8 ELA. And so we headed right back into that development phase. So I'm going to let our curriculum coordinators, both elementary and secondary for English language arts, give just a little bit of information about how the monitoring and adjusting phase moved us right back into development.
Thank you, Jessica. This is Brenda Jones, Elementary Literacy Coordinator. As Jessica said, that during the monitoring phase, there's data that is acted upon, and sometimes the data requires a greater action and a greater response. So that was the case for literacy in kindergarten through 8th grade. Jessica mentioned that, no worries, that the CNI audit was done internally in February. Throughout 22-23, there was monitoring and adjustment made to our current curriculum, but at that same time, what was happening was strategic analysis of literacy trends over time, strategic analysis of assessments and things that were happening in the classroom, as well as calibrated walks and really looking and studying closely the literacy instruction that was happening throughout classrooms. It also included teacher feedback and a system-wide analysis of our overall ELA programming. That led us to a strategic response of moving directly into development. So throughout the development phase, spring of last year, there was an elementary and middle school literacy team put together. Professional learning started to happen with that team around evidence-based practices. Core resources were evaluated and elevated to be studied further. And so we're moving into that kind of final phase of the development for K-8. Along with elementary happening last year, this summer in July, Act 20 was passed, the Wisconsin Reads Act. In further service of the Wisconsin DPI's mission and vision, they have adopted this act. There are a lot of components of the act, but most pertinent to this information right now is the strategic implementation of science-based early literacy instruction. You can see on the screen what that means. And what's important to note is the work that we have already started last year and we are continuing through is in direct alignment with the Wisconsin Reads Act.
Yes. We'll wait till the very end if that's okay. We're getting close to the end. So yes, hold that great thought. No, you're good. So as Brenda just mentioned, we were starting this process prior to Act 20, but now we are in direct alignment also with what the Act is asking of us. All right. So kind of coming to an end here in just a bit, as named before, the monitoring and adjusting phase can also result in small but impactful changes. And that is the case for K-12 mathematics. So at this time, I'm going to let Liza Weber and Melissa Jakes talk about K-12 math.
So within our 7-year curriculum cycle, as you heard, 4 years are dedicated to monitoring and adjusting. High quality core resources really matter. And we're never going to find a perfect curriculum that supports 100% of teachers and students perfectly. So it's for that reason that the internal monitoring and adjusting occurs is critically important for student success. Ongoing continuous improvement means we don't wait until the subject is up for audit again to respond to what we're noticing. During the monitoring and adjust phase, we engage in the in-depth study of learning and outcomes within a subject across our system, and we take action in response to that information. Our 7-year curriculum cycle is a macro cycle of ongoing continuous improvement. And within that larger cycle, during the 4 years of monitor and adjust, there's a smaller cycle of ongoing continuous improvement occurring. Let's take a look at some examples of the monitoring phase that are currently taking place in mathematics. Last year at the elementary level, we began to notice the differences between the online supplemental tools being used across elementary classrooms, both in the specific tool and the way in which the tools were being used. So we engaged in an online supplemental tool review process last spring, through which we considered as many online tools as possible. We established a review team and put the online tools through a process of evaluating each tool's alignment to standards, the research proven effectiveness, and fit within our local context. We piloted the top 3 programs in our school district, and as a result of that process, we've implemented Dreambox in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade and Khan Academy in grades 3rd through 5th grade this school year. We're implementing these 2 online supplemental tools in any classroom that uses Investigations 3 as their core resource. Over the course of this year, we'll monitor the impact of those tools on student achievement and adjust accordingly. Also in the monitoring and adjust phase in mathematics, we've responded to Wisconsin's 2021 math standards. Wisconsin's Department of Public Instruction put our whole state on a 3-year timeline. This is the first year that our state exam will reflect the 2021 math standards. And so we've responded accordingly. This year, you will see 2 tools being implemented in classrooms in response to those standards. Wisconsin has replaced every word fluent in mathematics standards with flexible and efficient. Since we were on a 3-year timeline and knew this change was coming officially this school year, we piloted a program in 4th grade in a 4th grade classroom last year, and we're implementing building fact fluency across all grade 4 classrooms to address this change in Wisconsin standards. We're also implementing number racks in grades kindergarten and 1st grade in response to the changes in the 2021 Wisconsin standards.
Secondary math has had their universal core resource in place for a number of years, College Preparatory Mathematics, or CPM. While teachers have been using a common resource, we identified that not every classroom was assessing students in a consistent way, and therefore recognized the need for common summative assessments in order to ensure that all students have access to high expectations and grade level math standards. Last year, common assessments were created for all 6th through 8th grade math classes. This past spring and summer, teams came together to create common assessments for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. These assessments are now in place and being used this school year. Teachers, instructional coaches, and I are following the student results of the common assessments closely to identify where adjustments to instruction and assessment are needed in order to ensure proficiency for all students. Common reassessments are also being created and in use this school year to offer students additional opportunities to demonstrate their continued learning of grade level skills. Last year, we also recognized the need to determine the most important work of each course to reinforce effective instructional planning. In Wisconsin, there are close to 100 standards for math in grades 6 through 8 and over 150 standards for high school math. Knowing that many of these skills are interconnected between courses, focus standards were identified in order to support teachers in determining which skills may need more time and attention throughout a school year. All grade level standards are still taught and assessed, but these focus standards are instructed and assessed multiple times throughout each course to ensure mastery before students move to the next course and the next set of standards. With the creation of common assessments and focus standards for each course, we recognize that supporting teachers with efficient planning to implement these resources was also needed. This year, unit guides are being written and provided to teachers for 6th grade through Algebra 2. These unit guides identify the student outcomes of each unit, important vocabulary, the state standards that are instructed, assessed, and spiraled from previous learning, and a pacing calendar to ensure that all skills are covered over the course of a school year. This guidance ensures coherence across learning spaces in all of our schools and clarity for teachers on where to focus instructional decisions. Our instructional coaches are supporting the use of these unit guides during common planning time with teachers.
So as we kind of wrap up, I just want to note that our curriculum coordinators are newer to our system. So with our reorganization and just within the last year, this curriculum review cycle was put into motion. So starting in the 22-23 school year. So a lot of the action that you're hearing is relatively new, but it completely necessary in order to see improvement changes across our system. So it's relatively new, but we're on a really amazing path as outlined in the work that you are hearing about tonight. So this really concludes our presentation part of the evening. And we hope that you have a deeper understanding of the curriculum review cycle and the work that's happening this next school year. And at this time, we're going to move into the engagement session. So around the room, there are tables set up for each of the curriculum coordinators. And here outlined on the screen are a few ways that you can engage and interact with them. Those are things that they talked about this evening, but you're welcome to ask them any questions. You're welcome to ask Dr. Marble and myself questions as well. But thank you for your time and attention for this first part of our evening. And Jamie, at this time, we can go ahead and stop the recording.